Oh, go ahead. I just got back from the gym, so I don't think I'm quite ready yet.
No worries. I understand. I understand. All righty, let this intro play. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Rum Boys Fantasy Sports Network. Today we got an awesome show for you guys. Absolutely amazing special guest that we're gonna have on today. We are talking with the fantasy doctors. We've been promoting it all week long, so I'm sure you guys already know about it. But welcome to the show. Check out rumboys.com if you haven't. Also, I'm gonna go ahead and plug the fantasydoctors.com as well. Check them out. They have an injury draft guide that you can check out for $10 right now. It's going for $10. You guys could go head over to their website and fill that out really quick as well. Today is going to be a super informative episode for you guys. We are going to be talking about fantasy football, but at this moment, I am going to allow Jesse to go ahead and introduce himself to the Rum Boys Nation.
Hey, everybody. My name is Jesse. Also, Dr. Jesse Morse, if I'm wearing my white coat. And I am a sports medicine doctor. I practice orthopedics in Florida. And I am a crazy fantasy football fan as well as baseball. And then I cover pretty much any injury we have to offer.
Yes. I have been following Jesse for a very, very long time. So when I tell you guys, this man knows the stuff, he knows the stuff. And we wouldn't bring anyone on the show that does not know their stuff. As you guys know, we've had guests in the past that come and they rise to the occasion of answer call of duty of providing you guys information and bring you guys the facts. Jesse, we're gonna kind of, I want to get to know you really quick. But before we get into it, I do want to discuss your injury draft guide that is
Yeah.
available on the website. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So
Get.
this year we at the Fantasy Doctors. So the Fantasy Doctors is a group of sports and orthopedic trained physicians, all physicians. We have several foot and ankle specialists, hands. When we're not giving our info online or whatnot, we are either in the operating room or in clinic seeing patients. We have a couple people that help us that are non-medical, kind of put stuff together. As far as I'm aware, we're the only group of sorts. Everything you see kind of written by us online has a doctor's sign-off on it. This is what we would tell our patients based on the information we know. Obviously, certain times are limited. Certain sports are very vague, like hockey, and certain sports are very specific, like baseball and sometimes football. We realized a couple of years ago, Celine Parikh, the founder, he realized that injuries play such a role, but the fan didn't really have an idea of what to expect timeline wise. They were relying on kind of medical expertise or lack thereof of beat writers and stuff like that. While they have fantastic information, it doesn't always translate to accurate timelines. So we realized we could kind of put our medical expertise along with their information based on what we know about injuries, how long they take to come back, so on and so forth. So we kind of went from there, and we've been building and building. And this year I kind of went a little crazy starting in May or so and started writing up a draft guide. So everybody's like, yeah, just another draft guide. A little different. So
Yeah.
basically what I did was I wrote down a list of every single major injury that occurred in 2018 based on a player, how much time they missed, how important they were, were they fringe or were they like, top 20 player. And then I started kind of developing a list of players that we should talk about. And basically I came up with, it's got to be over 60 players now. I think it's between 60 and 70 of players that needed to be discussed. Their injuries mattered. Their injury history mattered. And basically, initially, I kind of was glossing over them, just doing a quick overview. But over the past 4 to 6 weeks, I kind of took each profile and just kind of went ham and decided to really go from, like, where were they born? Were they a stud in high school? Were they what star recruit were they? Where did they go? What injuries did they have in college? All types of stuff, and I just kind of continue to build on it. And then at the end of the bottom, I kind of give you an overall summary review of their injuries, how risky they are, in my opinion, or our opinion, and what their potential is for 2019 based on said information.
Very nice, very nice, and it's very in-depth information that you guys provide. You provide a service that is very valuable, one, to the fantasy podcast industry, because we actually get to hear and see from the inside of the OR. I mean, and you guys have that experience in the field. By the way, how long have you been a physician? You're a physician, correct? Did I get it right?
Yeah, so I'm a couple of years, a little over a year out of fellowship. I'm personally a sports medicine doctor, so I'm actually non-surgical. But several of our physicians on staff are all orthopedic physicians and have specialties. So I graduated from high school in 2002, med school in 2013. I did my residency until 2016. I did a sports medicine fellowship. So all in total, about 14 years of training.
Oh my goodness! So you are definitely clearly dedicated to your craft. Make sure you guys also subscribe to the Fancy Doctors YouTube if you have not already. Like I said, content that's going to help you make or break your fantasy season. You've heard them on multiple sources: Bleacher Report, Yahoo, ESPN Radio, Sirius XM Fantasy. Now they are here on the Run Boys Fantasy Network to give you guys a special injury breakdown. We're going to get into a game. Do you like games, Jesse? You like games, Doc? Awesome. So we're going to get into a game that we play on our show called Why the Rum Is Always Gone. And here on my phone, I have a list of a couple of guys that I want you to kind of go into, for the fans, why the rum is always gone. And you have the list as well. The first one that we're going to start off with is my Washington Redskins. By the way, shout out to your team. Shout out to your team. Shout out to your rings. I couldn't have you on the show without paying respect.
I get hatred for that. But I grew up there, so I used to work for the Patriots when I was younger, so I hold my allegiances strong.
Hey, I'm from the Northeast. I get it, and plus I cover all sports and all teams on my show, so I don't get to be biased. First name that we have on the list, though, from the Washington Redskins is former LSU superstar Darius Geis. He's coming into his second year. We saw some flashes of him last year in the preseason when he broke out for that big run and then got injured. What are you expecting, and why is the rum always gone in terms of Darius Geis?
So I love Darius Geis's potential. I love his running style. He kind of reminds me of Zeke, maybe without the hands. But the problem is he suffered obviously a pretty significant injury in the ACL tear. But not only that, the primary issue that I have with Geis, and it's not him, it's just kind of how the situation unfolded, is that he developed an infection somewhere in his body. I don't know if we have any specific details, but he required 4 surgeries as a result. So what happens, let me step back and say, when you tear your ACL, if everything goes perfectly smoothly within the next week, you will have your ACL reconstruction surgery, meaning we rebuild the ligament because you can't use the old one. It's just mush. You basically either rebuild it from a hamstring or from the tendon that holds down the kneecap called the patellar tendon, or there's a couple others, but those are the 2 most common. usually try to do that within a week or two. Sometimes it's a little too much swelling and you wait a couple weeks. Well, what happened with Geis is that he actually tore his ACL, but then he developed an infection that puts that ligament at risk, at significant risk. So if they put the ligament in before and then developed the infection, you don't know how strong that ligament is going to be. Is it infected? They haven't told us all these nitty-gritty details. But what all we know is that he had IV antibiotics for 7 weeks. So when you're on antibiotics, you really, at least in this case, you really can't start ramping up your activity, your PT. You can, but just not to the extent as if you didn't have antibiotics. So most ACL reconstructions take about 9 to 12 months to come back. With this 7 weeks of IV antibiotics, that pushes that timeline out basically 2 months. So it's less than essentially a year removed, and we really don't know when his rehab truly started. Did it start before the infection and the infection put it on hold? Did it start after the infection and the infection kind of threw a monkey wrench into it? So as much as I like Geis, I don't have much expectations for him this year. Predominantly because most guys struggle in their first year after an ACL reconstruction because they don't trust their ligament.
Okay, so from a fantasy perspective, now tossing in the fantasy range, where do you, or how should I phrase this? Do you just kind of let him fall to you, and where do you kind of let him fall before you just bite the bullet and go ahead and grab Darius Geis off the draft boards?
So there's a couple ways to approach this. It really depends on what you're drafting, how big the league is, and how aggressive you want to be. I got burned the past couple of years by guys like Devonta Freeman, Leonard Fournette last year. So there's certain guys that leave a bad taste in my mouth. But the more I read about his history, the more I realized, all right, there's a good chance he's not going to be 100%. We know that Adrian Peterson wasn't signed to ride the bench. We know Bryce Love is probably not going to contribute pretty much at all this year because he had his ACL reconstruction in either January or February. So anything before the 7th, 8th round is probably too soon for me based on his risk, and you're probably not going to really be able to get him there. If you are in like a redraft, I probably wouldn't touch him. Just based on going in a they probably won't have the luxury of waiting because someone can scoop him up before you. In like a best ball, you can roll the dice if he falls to you. So personally, I don't want anything to do with him because I don't trust him, and it'll cost too much draft capital to draft him. But he definitely has talent. I just don't know how effective he's going to be because of what I just said, what we know about his ACL.
Oh yeah, and I have to agree. I have to agree when in terms of Darius Geis. I'm staying far away from him as well. I even passed on him in the Scott Fishbowl League. Next up, we have a guy that you just mentioned while explaining the previous player, Devonta Freeman. Now, he's burned me in the past, and my Devonta Freeman story, really quick, is actually fairly interesting. I drafted Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell held out last year. I'm scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. Let me take these two Atlanta guys. I know that one of them is probably going to get hurt, so I get the handcuff in Tevin Coleman. Of course, sure enough, Devonta Freeman gets hurt as soon as I acquire him, and I'm running with Tevin Coleman, AP, Jordan Howard, and a few other guys. Your take on Devonta Freeman? Why is the rum always gone, sir?
So here's my issue with Freeman. I like the kid. I really do. But you got to remember that running backs in the NFL have a short half-life. Not many running backs are really effective, past 26, 27, maybe 28. Adrian Peterson is kind of an exception. The way they use running backs now, most teams are committee. So not many guys are getting, the passing and the running, your true bell cow. So a couple of years ago, Devonta Freeman was a beast. He was a first-round pick or a second-round pick. but the past 2 years he has missed almost half of the season both times. Like he spent the majority of the 2018 off season, or basically before that season, rehabbing from a knee injury, an MCL, and what we call a PCL. He came back and then basically went out soon again. So it's like he burned everybody. I mean, how many plays? How effective was he last year for you?
None. Zero. I got zero out of him. I don't think I even started him a game.
Yeah, I mean, so like, all right, so he had 14 carries and 5 passes he caught in the entire season. And you want to spend draft capital on him in the first 4 rounds?
Nope. He's a guy. He's a guy that I'm definitely staying away from.
So in baseball, I play fantasy baseball too, which is a different beast. You can get away with your first round or second round pick getting injured because it's a long season, because there's a lot of games, because it's a deep roster. I don't think you can do that in fantasy football. You really have 7 weeks, really maybe 8 to shine. So if your guy misses 4 or 5 of those weeks, and then when he does come back, are you going to have enough confidence to start him? Or are you so far, are you 3-5 heading into week 9 where you're like, I don't even think I can't make the playoffs even if I wanted to. So I like talent, but I'm also risk adverse when it comes to these guys that I see are just on the wrong side of the hill and going downward. He's playing in his age 27 season. He has at least 3 concussions. He's got a bum right knee, a foot injury, a groin injury that required surgery. I mean, yes, I know he has energy and mental toughness, but is his body going to hold up? And when it comes down to that, I don't want it. I mean, I think Brian Hill is actually the guy in the backfield, based on what we saw the other night, to own, maybe.
Yeah. No, and I saw that when I was watching the other night, because I call play-by-play on my channel as well. And when I was calling the plays, I was like, Hill's a guy that's good, that's going to shine. Ito Smith hasn't shown us much, so if you're going to trust anyone out of that Atlanta backfield, I feel like Hill is going to he's going to emerge. Preseason is where stars are born, and that's why it is important that you take a look at these games. Maybe you take a look at more than just 5-10 minutes, or just the first stringers, or your backups. You watch the full game and watch the full scope. Figure out what your team is going to do, because you may figure out a fantasy guy in a fantasy gym that you can steal in those late rounds. I feel like your fantasy team is really, really made in the late rounds.
Oh yeah, I mean, smart about your early picks, but you can definitely be burned. You can be benefited in the late rounds if you pick up a guy like last year, James Conner.
Yep.
I mean,
James Conner is a prime example.
Sit out. But look what Conner did, and no one expected him to do anything because they assumed Bell was coming back. That's what happened. I mean, that wasn't really an injury risk. That was more of a unique situation, but that just shows you that, your double-digit guys, one injury or one holdout can change the game. He went from a backup handcuff, no quote-unquote nobody, to a top 10 running back, top 5 running back some weeks.
Exactly. I have a guy that we'll mention in a later segment later on, so make sure you guys all stick around and stay tuned for that one. We're going to switch to the wide receiver. We mentioned 2 running backs. We're going to switch it to the wide receiver right now, and I'm going to go AJ Green. Now, I'm staying away from AJ Green. I said this months ago during the offseason. I told you guys, for those of you that are in early drafts or early year drafts, and you've already drafted and you picked them, I'm sorry, you should have been watching the Run Boys, or you should have checking out Dr. Jesse Morse on the Fantasy Doctors to get that right information. Dr. Jesse, I kind of already know where you're going to go with this one, but let's go ahead and give it to the people.
So going into this offseason, or into the early training camp, a lot of people were scared off by AJ Green because of his subpar 2018 season, when he obviously missed half or most of the year because of repetitive toe injuries. So basically what he had suffered was a I think of like hyperextending your thumb, and I'll just put that as your toe. The issue with the toe is that it's basically the balance center for your body. So if you if your toe is banged up, you can't function. You can't run. You have no burst. You can't make hard cuts because that toe is not responding like you want it to. So he had surgery in the off season for turf toe, and he was rehabbing appropriately. I mean, when he's on the field, he is a wide receiver one. We know that. The problem is he's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. He's 31 now. We don't know really what we're getting in the Red Rocket. He is what he is. They have a sneaky running back in Mixon. Boyd is probably going to break out this year, or started to show that last year. But AJ Green kind of made that offense run. So then obviously the first couple of days of practice, he suffers a pretty significant ankle injury, and early in camp they really don't tell you much. Thankfully, we were able to find out. Obviously, he was carted off. He was swearing. We know that it was potentially significant. I don't think I ever saw any video of it. He ends up causing a pretty significant ankle injury where he actually probably rolled his ankle, and he probably, we don't know exactly, but he probably tore his ligament so much in his ankle that it actually pulled a piece off of bone with it, is my suspicion. Right. Or he has a small piece of a ligament or a small piece of bone floating around in his ankle. So that's pretty much as bad as it sounds. So you need to pretty much surgically repair this and clean this out, because if the ankle is shifted even by a millimeter or two, that's pretty substantial, and that's going to cause a lot of issues for you. The issue is that this is poor timing, because if he's lucky, he'll be back week 2 or week 3. But and the other thing of note is that this is on the other foot from his offseason toe surgery. So now both feet are banged up.
Yeah.
And one is healing. The other one is basically newly healing. So he doesn't even really have a good foot to stand on. And he's going to be
no pun intended.
Yeah, like he's going to be trying to fighting guys at the line. He's trying to run in routes. Like, with what you're going to have to spend to get him, unless he's in the 10th round, I can't touch him. I can't. He's too risky for me.
I feel that. I feel that. Shockingly enough, when I was doing my SFB draft, a guy was bold enough to take AJ in like the 4th or 5th. I was like, "What are you doing? Like, what are you doing?" Yeah, and then sure enough, I end up with a hate DM on Twitter stating that my take is what cursed AJ Green, and it wasn't my take, but it was a practice field. It was a practice field. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with anything that we have control over.
Exactly. We're just the analysts. We're just here to bring you guys the news. Want to get into? I'm gonna move the list around from what you're probably looking at. And I'm gonna go Mike Evans here. We're gonna keep it on the wide receiver. I'm gonna actually cross out Corey Coleman because we already know about him, and he's not really impacting anyone's fantasy lineup.
Nope.
So I'm gonna move Mike Evans up right there underneath AJ Green. What's the concern surrounding Mike Evans?
Zero. Nope.
Zero.
He hasn't had an injury since 2016 that we know of.
So he did get a little banged up in practice the other day in training camp.
I haven't heard anything that is news to me. I mean, it's hard to keep track of all these injuries, but as far from his history in the past, I haven't heard anything that's concerning. Obviously that can change in the blink of an eye. But at this time, I mean, without new news or new injuries, I have no concerns. He's going to be Winston's potential number one, with Godwin probably a close number 2, and OJ Howard is a sneaky number 3. I have no idea what they're doing in their backfield with their running backs. So I think they're just going to sling the ball like they did last year all year long.
Nice. So finally, we have a guy in this segment in the Why the Rum is Always Gone, and he's safe. He is safe
as far as I know. Yeah.
So we can rock with Mike Evans.
Yep. I mean, so I feel like he's kind of a slept on guy. Like D Hop always gets his praises, and then Adams is big this year. Juju is expected to take over for some of Brown's targets. Green obviously is injured, so he falls out of that tier. But then you got like a guy like Evans, who's like he's a monster. He's got a gunslinger, basically at quarterback. He's 6'5", like what 220-ish. He's a big dude. I don't know why he can't continue to excel.
Facts. I like it. Maybe even based off of what you just said there, maybe you can get Mike Evans maybe fairly low. Maybe no one's going to be looking at him. Or is that maybe a piece of what you're saying too?
I think it's certain guys have a tendency to develop hype whenever in the off season or whenever. I don't feel like anybody has said anything about him this year. Godwin is on like the top of everybody's wish list, it seems like, but they really haven't talked about Evans. I mean, and Evans had fantastic numbers last year. He's always healthy, and I don't think he's missed a game in a couple of years, or at least not for injury wise. And he's pretty reliable if you consider the new coaching changes and you consider how talented he is.
Yeah.
He's definitely a top 10. I mean, there's only a couple of guys that I would probably want over him.
Dilly. Hey, I like it. I like the Mike Evans tape. We're gonna go into the quarterback really quick. Who gets all these guys the ball? And we're gonna tackle Cam Newton right now. No pun intended. Because he gets hit enough.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Newton, why the rum is always gone. What's your take for this year?
So I feel like most people are concerned about Cam. And probably rightfully so. They understand he's already had shoulder issues in the past. They saw another quarterback miss a whole year and Andrew Luck with shoulder issues. But thankfully, I take care of this injury pretty much every day or several times a day. And I understand while they are very challenging to treat and they don't heal well in anybody, even if you're 25, the fact that he had surgery, the fact that he is looking good. He actually had off-season rotator cuff surgery, which is the rotator cuff is a group of four muscles in your shoulder, kind of two ones in the front and two ones in kind of the back part of your shoulder that are really essentially responsible for throwing the ball indirectly. That's where all your strength comes from. Anytime you put your arms out in front of you and have your arms extended, that's your all rotator cuff. When you're close to your body, you have back, you have core, you have other stuff. But once you're extended out, that's purely rotator cuff driven. So if your rotator cuff is banged up, you don't have that velocity, you don't have that accuracy, and you don't have that strength because the rotator cuff, think of it almost as like a piece of rope, and now think of it as kind of like ripped in half, or a big piece of it's ripped off. Now try to still expect that rope to have the same strength as when it was brand new. Not going to happen. So they tried to make it brand new. It will never be quote unquote brand new. But the other important part about Cam Newton is that he actually changed his throwing style to lessen the injury risk on these recently repaired rotator cuffs. So if you change your arm slot like a pitcher, if they throw a baseball pitcher, if they throw up here versus they throw on the side versus a true sidearm, each change in interval is going to access or activate a different set of rotator cuff fibers. So if he throw overhead and now he's throwing from a little bit of a sidearm or like a 3/4 slot, that is going to use different muscles, which indirectly may prevent him from having a re-injury. He's also got some dynamic wide receivers and a pretty stud running back that he can rely on. So I actually like Cam this year. He's always got that running element that keeps him relevant and honest. But he can always dump off the CMC, as we saw a billion times last year.
Oh yeah.
Samuel, he's got more. The tight ends remain to be seen what's going on there, but he's definitely got some potential guys that could make some differences here.
Okay. So Cam Newton gets the Doc's graces. Very nice, very nice, even despite the injury. Final guy that we have here on this list and in this segment is going to be Hunter Henry. Now, last year in fantasy football, I call it a wasteland for the tight end position. It was literally a wasteland. You were struggling to find one. Luckily, I had Kittle, but I also did I had in one league have Hunter Henry at the beginning of the season prior to the injury. Uh, what are your thoughts around Hunter Henry and Hunter Henry coming back? I'm high on him. I say you still go for him, but you're the doctor.
So I feel like there's two positions this year that are super shallow when it comes to studs. Bell cow running backs, and that list is shrinking by the day with all these contract concerns, and
Mhm.
top tight ends. You can find respectable potential breakout wide receivers in rounds 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Someone like Allison or MBS or a
Oh
Kuti.
yeah.
You can find a sneaky quarterback in the later rounds that's effective, whether it's Luck isn't going later, but someone like Matty Ice or even Lamar if he ends up running a lot. But your bell cows are few and far between. I mean, basically you've got about 5 or 6, and maybe some of those aren't even true bell cows anymore because of their injury concerns or their committees. And then you have like 3 or 4 top tight ends. Your Kelseys, your Kittles, maybe your Ertz, and even then he's starting to get kind of depressed with his volume. And then you have your next level guys, your OJ Howards, your Hunter Henrys. So Henry broke a lot of hearts last year when he tore his ACL in the offseason. He said he was going to try to come back and be returned back midseason, but I knew that wasn't going to happen, predominantly because it's basically on the timing of it. It just wasn't going to be realistically possible. He did actually return, and basically the Chargers season-ending loss to my Patriots. But the good news is that he returned and he was pretty effective, and that is a big vote of confidence. That was 8 months after ACL tear, which is a little faster than I'd like them to return, 9 to 12 months. But the good news is it sounds like he didn't have any setbacks, and that kind of helped gain him some confidence going into this upcoming season. We know that the Chargers and Phillip Rivers love their tight ends. That's what made, Antonio Gates relevant for the past, feels like forever.
Yeah.
But, Gates, I believe he's officially retired as far as we know. So I think it's time a potential stud or sneaky offense, depending what happens with Gordon. I think Henry can potentially be a top 3, 4 to 6 range tight end this year. I really do. I don't have any reason why he shouldn't. The tight end is a different position than your running backs and then your wide receivers that are coming off of an ACL. There's a pretty interesting comment that a lot of patients will make, and there's a kind of an overall consensus in returning from an ACL is that patients will tell you it's approximately 70% mental and 30% physical, which is kind of crazy, but that's how they approach it. So think you essentially need your ACL to be able to run and stop and turn on a dime. Day to day, if you tear your ACL and you're not super athletic, you can function. But you can't run, stop, turn, cut, you pivot. You can't do that without an ACL. So these guys are basically trying to run hard, cut hard, and trying to fake the receiver, the DB or whatever at the same time, and then break out and try to catch a pass. Well, if they don't feel confident in that stop, start, cut ability because of the ACL, they're not going to be as effective. Their route tree is going to be decreased, and they're not as good. They're just not going to look as good. The benefit of having a guy as big as Henry is you really don't have to put it exactly in his hands. Obviously, it doesn't hurt, but he has the athleticism to be able to get balls that are kind of close to him. He's 6'5", 250. I mean, huge. So even if you dump it off relatively over the middle, he doesn't have to do these quick, Julian Edelman type routes. And I think that he could have a very solid year at a respectable price.
Very nice, very nice. And I feel like I got him at a respectable price, like you just mentioned. I got him in the 5th round in one of my recent drafts, and I was satisfied. So I like Hunter Henry this year as well. If he's available, I feel like you could probably buy low, not too low, but maybe 4th round, 6th round, maybe even. You could go out there, grab him, get him on your team, because everyone's going to be scared of the injury.
Oh yeah.
Next segment that we are going to get into is stay aboard or walk the plank. I'll name off a guy. You're going to let us know stay aboard or walk the plank with them. All right.
Okay.
Awesome. First one on the list, Jimmy Garoppolo. Stay aboard or walk the plank.
Stay aboard. He's got sneaky potential. He's going to be one of those guys that you draft in the later rounds that could win you your league.
Okay, I like it. So everything is good with the injury from what I've been hearing outside of training camp. It's all good.
I mean, if you look at his data before his injury, he's pretty elite. I mean, he's pretty up there. That's why the Patriots are so high on him. He's not a runner like your Cams, your Wentzes, or your Allens, or Lamars, or Kylers, where you have to really worry about his ACL. I mean, for the most part, Jimmy G's a pocket passer. Obviously, you need your ACL to function, but I'm not overly concerned. He's got a very good or potentially very good staff. He's got a couple sneaky running backs that are all seem to be banged up, but they can form some type of committee. I mean, you got a stud tight end in Kittle. I don't know what to expect of Goodwin. Pettis has some potential this year. He's got Debo. I mean, he's got some weapons, so I don't see why he can't be a top 10, top 15 quarterback.
Oh yeah. Speaking of Debo, check out my Debo Samuel interview if you guys haven't. I'd appreciate it. Sony Michel, your own Sony Michel.
It all depends on cost. So, am I worried about Sony Michel's knee in the short term? No. Am I worried about Sony Michel's knee in the long term? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why? He's got a lot of wear and tear. He was a track star in high school and college, or I don't know about college, but I know at least high school. He's had a couple minor knee injuries that have led to some what we call scopes and partial tearing of that meniscus, and that has obviously scared people. But for as much as the Patriots run, I believe they were third or sixth in rushing attempts. They were up there.
Right.
I think
they were barely up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he might catch more passes this year. I heard this morning he's fielding a little more. I mean, between him, Damian Harris, Burkhead a little bit, and James White, I think there's going to be a lot of passes thrown. Brady turned, I believe, 42 today, so they're not trying to let him get hit. So they're going to dump off a lot of passes, hand the ball off a lot, and set up another winning season and try to win ring number 7.
Nice. I like how you threw in ring number 7. Happy birthday to the GOAT. Man, I feel like no matter what, I somehow end up surrounded by you Boston guys between Rum Boys Northeast. Shout out to my colleague Bobby, and then now yourself, Jesse. I love it though. Living here in Colorado, it keeps me close to home. You guys bring me back. It's great. Next guy that we have up for stay aboard or walk the plank, Adrian Peterson. Now, not only with AP, I would like to know how he was able to turn back the hands of time and discover the fountain of youth.
So the only thing I can come up with him is that he's just a genetic freak, simply put. I mean, there's no medicine or kind of data behind it. I mean, so here's an example. Adrian Peterson, most people return from an ACL in 9 to 12 months. He returned in 6 months and essentially broke records that season. I mean, if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will. Like, he's just genetically gifted. He's in obviously some financial troubles, which is probably part of the reason why he's still on the field. But he is just impressive. You could appreciate why he didn't want to stay in New Orleans because he wasn't going to get the work. You saw how unfortunately ineffective he was in Arizona with their banged up line or whatever. I mean, but he was better than obviously New Orleans. He was pretty good last year with Washington, considering their line and their chaos in the offense. He's really their healthiest running back, which is kind of a scary statement given his age.
Thanks.
If you want a hot take, and I think I've said this before, I don't remember which podcast it was on. I'm fading the entire Redskins offense this year.
I think it was that Big Dog's Got to Eat that you said that? I think that was on Big Dogs.
It could be.
Yeah. Shout out to Nick. Wow. I was the guy in the draft room last year, really quick, with Adrian Peterson. Here's my experience with Adrian Peterson. I was never able to get him before in previous years. Okay, I've been playing fantasy football since I was 17. I was never able to get him in previous years. He was sitting there, I think it was like the 9th round. And I was like, nobody's taking this guy yet. I need a Redskin on my team, like just to represent, just having fun, just gears turning in my mind. Went ahead and I grabbed him. Everyone laughed at me. But then when I turned around, I started whooping people's ass in them games, man. I tell you, Jesse, I had the whole draft room mad for the whole season.
He surprised a lot of people. I mean, I don't know what's going on with their O-line. I don't know what's going on with their quarterback. Their wide receivers aren't ideal. I don't know what to do with Reed. So, I mean,
the whole team is a giant question mark.
Correct. And apparently something going on with their medical staff, whether it's Alex Smith or Geis or, Williams is complaining about stuff now. So I just get a bad taste. You could easily pick him in the 10th, 11th round and get a guy who's getting 15, 20, 25 touches a week. That doesn't happen often. So, I don't blame you if you take him. I don't know how much he's got left in the tank, but I guess we'll find out. He improved. He impressed us last year. I think he ran for over 1,000 yards.
I feel like he's going to be running like a madman. I say wait for him to fall to you, of course. Let him fall, because everyone's scared of the age. And, there's going to be someone that's like, well, he was injured. He was injured before. Let him fall to you. My thing with AP, he's discovered the fountain of youth. He's going to be running like a madman on the field, especially because of the financial troubles. I'm sorry. Think about it like a fighter who is down on their money and goes out there because they need to keep that big house in Vegas, Floyd. You go ahead and you take a fight, So think of it like that type of scenario. That's why I look at AP. Stay aboard or walk the plank. Emmanuel Sanders.
Want nothing to do with him.
Wow. Not even a buy low scenario.
Nope. I don't trust the Achilles at all. Why?
I like it. That one was quick.
Nope. There has never been a running back or big name wide receiver that maybe there's been one that came back after Achilles reconstruction and has been able to return that burst of energy, speed, quickness, stopping. And that's why I'm so low on Donta Foreman too. Prove to me that you can defy the odds, and then I'll have faith in you. But as of this time, there has never been anybody that's defied the odds for Achilles tear. The only it's basically like saying you want everybody to be Adrian Peterson from his ACL. Like you can't. Like the data shows, even the new techniques. The data shows that most guys never return to the field. About 30% of ACL or Achilles reconstructions never return to the NFL field.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then if you break it down further into like running backs and wide receivers, just there hasn't been anybody. I mean, it's just a bad injury for these offensive players. Other positions, a different story. But these two positions in particular, they scare me. I think Cortland Sutton's going to be okay. I like Deshaun Hamilton. I like their backfield. I don't know what's going on with Theo Riddick. But I don't trust Flacco. So, I have to kind of pause with that.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there. That whole organization, once again, they're a question mark for me, but for a different reason. It's because their front office. I mean, the way that they're trying to, they bring in these young guys and they're not giving them any type of encouragement between the organization and the media. So I think that that's going to have a lot to affect the field as well. Like you said, you don't trust Flacco. I don't trust Flacco. I wish we saw more flashes of Drew Lock's greatness when it comes to overcoming adversity last night. But he is a quarterback that can overcome adversity. I think he'll eventually start middle of the season. I'm a believer in history repeats itself. And I'm sorry, Joe Flacco, it's going to repeat itself for you. Just the way that it is. Stay aboard or walk the plank, Cooper Kupp.
Depends on the price. I don't mind. He was a stud last year when he was healthy. I want a piece of that offense, especially we don't know we're gonna get a Gurley. Who's the number one wide receiver? Do they have three number twos? I don't know. Yeah. ACL. So think of here. I've been asked this question a couple times, and I have an easy correlation to guys get your expectations in line. Think of Julian Edelman in 2018. That's
okay.
what Kupp can be in 2019.
I like it. I say same thing. Depending on the price, let Cooper Kupp kind of fall to you, but not. I with this one, I want to say not too late because he is a guy that can make or break your team. He's a big difference maker. A guy that once again I discovered out of the preseason years and years and years ago. Feels like what, almost 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. I say mid range of your draft, if he's there, 6th, 7th round, go ahead and take him. 8th latest, obviously. He's probably not going to fall that far though. Next one I have, stay aboard, walk the plank, Sterling Shepard. We saw him catching passes from the Giants' Twitter. Saw him catching passes with one hand still.
So this more has to do with Eli than anything else.
Okay.
I'm not worried about his thumb injury. He'll be fine by week 1, 2. I love his volume that he's expected to get. He could be a wide receiver 1 in terms of volume, 10, 15 targets a game. Like, sign me up. But part of the problem is, I mean, are they going to put 2 guys on him every time? I mean, you have him, Ingram, and Saquon. There's a lot more defenders than there are scary offensive weapons for the Giants. So it's like,
exactly.
I don't. In terms of, he could be a value regardless of the thumb. The thumb doesn't scare me. He'll probably play the first couple of weeks to a month with a thumb brace, or he should anyway. But in terms of his actual potential, I think it's limited by Eli. I think Golden Tate is a good option as well. So who's going to be a better option? I don't know. I think they're both potential good options. I don't know if either is a 1, or I think they're both more like 2 or 3s. Are they just going to give Saquon 500 targets and like 5 million runs? I don't know.
I understand. Yeah, I feel that. I think that the only piece of the Giants offense that I'm buying this year, it is Saquon. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna say walk the plank on Sterling Shepard. He's gonna be a guy that I'm gonna say walk the plank on, just because I don't know if he's gonna get as much attention, being that he's more likely now gonna be the guy that's double teamed as well, even when healthy. I'm walking the plank on Sterling Shepard. Finally, for this segment, we have Julian Edelman, another Patriot. 2 Patriots made it into this segment. What do you got, brother?
So, I love me some Edelman. I'm not worried about his thumb. Basically, if they told me he had surgery on his thumb, I would have been worried. But he didn't. So that means he basically had what we call non-displaced, meaning break something and basically put it back together like nothing ever broke. That's basically what non-displaced is. If it broke and it was in like 3 or 4 pieces, then that's surgery. That's pinned.
Yeah.
That's complicated. If he tore his UCL, which is this ligament on the inside, that usually sometimes can get a piece of bone pulled off with it. That's a surgery as well. You can break the tip of your thumb. I think that's what RG3 did. But overall, I'm not overly concerned. We've seen Edelman continue to defy odds. He's like my height, 5'8", 5'9", but he's a beast across the middle and he doesn't care. Brady relies on him. They're starting to increase their wide receiver depth, but in terms of sheer catches on the team, I think it's Edelman and then Dorsett, depending on what's going on with Gordon's suspension. They have their potential rookie stud wide receiver, but I don't know. The Patriots' defense or offensive schemes are really hard to pick up. It's not easy to pick up as a rookie. They signed what's his name, Meredith yesterday. They were set, so they have a couple potential guys, but Edelman is that number one. Gronk's gone. They're going to be a lot of wide receiver, kind of Edelman dump offs to White or running with Sony or Harris. So it's like more of the same. If you can get him in the 5th, 6th round, and he's going to get you 8 to 10 catches a week, why not? I mean,
why not? No, I'm right there with Julian Edelman. My only caveat to that is in Kill Harry. Now you got Meredith, like you mentioned. I feel like those pieces worry me in terms of and then also Maurice Harris, who's balling out in practice. I feel like those pieces worry me, but no matter what, I feel like you can also be secure at the same time in Edelman. Yeah, and he's gonna get his action.
Yeah, he's going to get his. They use him like White. They use White. They just dump it off. They need a first down. Like they have like 3 nobodies, or at least anybody's that have acted the game in several years. Watson's out for a couple of weeks with his suspension, so like they're going to have to depend on Edelman. They're going to have to depend on some of these guys. And I think he's just going to go back to what he knows. Amendola's gone, Hogan's gone, so 2 of his other security blankets, Gronk's gone. So it's like, who does he have to trust?
Right,
White and Burkhead and Edelman. Everybody else is semi-new face.
This is true. No, this is true. So Brady's gonna go where he's familiar. Is there any injury updates? We're going to get into our top 3 mailbag questions, but is there any injury updates that you wanted to address on the show and for the fans that I did not cover with the names that I addressed in the 2 segments?
So every couple days, I release an injuries update on my Twitter handle. I released one an hour or 2 ago. And this is like little nitty gritty stuff that unless you read like beat writers or read between the lines, you probably won't catch it. Antonio Brown hasn't showed up at practice yet because he's dealing with blisters on his feet. Go figure. These aren't overly concerning, but I don't blame him for not wanting to be on the field in the scorching heat, assuming they practice outside. It's early. It's not as important as later, and he get paid to show what he does in the field. So he has a top 5, top 8 wide receiver this year, even if he only gets 20 to 28% of target share. Sign me up, not worried. We talked about AJ Green. Damian Williams is dealing with a hamstring, but now a back injury. Be careful.
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley has a hamstring. Duke Johnson has a hamstring. Deshaun Hamilton has a hamstring. Paris Campbell, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams all have hamstring injuries. Very common injury early in the season because these guys go from training in the offseason, kind of mediocre, to full-blown, full pads, full burst, and the hamstring's not ready, and it barks at you. Be careful with the hamstring or you're going to end up like Leonard Fournette. Jimmy Graham, nothing overly concerning. Derrick Henry, Andrew Luck, both dealing with calf injuries. Luck's is more concerning. Give him a couple more weeks. If he's not back to 100%, then I will drop him in my rankings right now. I'm not overly concerned. Edelman, Shepard, both injured their thumbs. We talked about them. RG3 is back up anyway. Coleman is done for the year with his ACL. Crowder and A.J. Brown should both be fine. Be careful with the Zach Martin of the Cowboys. He has a back injury. He's getting an MRI. I haven't seen any results yet. Latavius Murray sounds like he's back from whatever he was on issue. Not concerned about Tyreek Hill with his bruised quad. He should be back. Buck Allen and Spencer Ware were both placed on IR for unknown reasons.
Nice. I like how you just went through the whole list. By the way, you can check out that list. I have it retweeted on my Twitter, and as long as you find my retweet, you're gonna find the Fantasy Doctors. But you can check out the Fantasy Doctors at the Fantasy DRS on Twitter as well. And then also you can you can check out Dr. Jesse Morse at Dr. Jesse Morse on Twitter as well. We are going to go ahead and get into our top 3 mailbag questions. One of them you're actually going to be able to see on the screen here. It was typed in the chat. Just give me 1 second. Let me see. 1 second here. There it is. All righty. So it says, "Hey Doc, you think Allen Hurns will return?" I'm assuming to the form he was, even with the nasty ankle break.
So ankle fractures in general don't particularly scare me after the fact. As long as they are surgically repaired correctly, which you have to kind of assume they are, these guys usually don't have much issues in the short term. In the long term, it's a different story. Not overly concerned. Delaney Walker had probably a similar fracture. I haven't seen the specifics on Hurns' injury, so I'm not overly worried about ankle fractures. A little bit different for like an Achilles or a or like an ACL or something like that. A little bit of a different situation.
Okay. So no concern with Allen Hurns. He's all clear, good to go. Who's, by the way, with the Miami Dolphins now, interestingly enough, for those who may not know. The second question is, what exactly do you think happened with Gurley? And if he does have arthritis, how do you think that affects him going forward?
So this is about a 15-minute answer, but I will I'll have 2 suggestions. One is if you want my full take on it, by the draft guide, it's probably worth this piece alone. It's probably 3,600 words or characters just on Gurley alone. Basically, he's got a lot of wear and tear in his knees. He just put up monster numbers from the get-go from high school. I believe he was a track star as well. Unfortunately, a lot of these guys, when they tear their ACL, you're going to have a big piece of what we call meniscus, which is the cartilage in and around the knee that protects, and a lot of the times they will have this removed or taken care of because it's torn. And when you lose some of that meniscus, those bones start smashing and your arthritis develops a lot faster. Even though he's only in his mid-20s, his knees are probably more like if you were see a 50-year-old's knees or something like that. He's got a lot of wear and tear. Just read the article and you'll be able to appreciate how significant his wear and tear is on his knees. I mean, I'll just read this one line. He played both running back and defensive back in high school. Okay, we didn't know that, or I didn't know that before I wrote this. In his senior year, he was in North Carolina, by the way. He ran for 2,600 yards and 38 touchdowns in 1 year. How are your knees doing after that season? That was before his ACL. So it's like he's got a lot of wear and tear. He also ran track, so there's another source of stress. His knee flared up. He's got arthritis. They can only put so many cortisone injections that will be effective. They can use PRP or stem cell, but it's not. I do it in my office. It's good, but it's not going to be enough for him. He could go 10 games without a reflare. He could go 2 games and then suffer a big flare and be out 3 or 4 weeks. The problem is arthritis is unpredictable, and he's not playing for another big contract because he's already well paid. So, as much as that's why they spent so much capital on him. They don't have. It's hard to trust his knee, and even if Gurley doesn't know what to expect of his knee, these things are unpredictable. I deal with it every day.
Yep, I would have to say Darrell Henderson time, I guess, right?
I mean, Gurley will get his. It's just a matter of when.
How long it's gonna last?
Yeah. I mean, they're going to decrease his weight. They're going to decrease his reps. He's still going to be very effective. The question is, at what cost? Is his cost worth what you're going to get out of him? If I told you he was going to give you 180 rushes, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns, is that worth his price right now? Probably not.
No. Yeah.
That's the problem.
I 100% feel you. I'm staying away from Gurley. I'm definitely gonna be that guy in the draft room to figure out a scheme to get someone else to bite on him. They'll probably just go back, watch this show, watch this particular clip here, and they'll be like, I watch your show, bro. That's the bad part about doing this, man. Once people know and they know, it makes it more difficult for you, and it's a challenge for you when you go to draft. And I'm sure you've dealt with that.
Oh yeah, I think it's even going to be even harder this year because of this for me.
Exactly. No, I 100% understand. Next question, the final question is Hollywood's foot. Is his foot A-okay? Is he going to be good to go for the young rookie?
I am about 70% done his profile before we started this show. I was just writing it up. This kid's got an interesting story. In California. Transferred after a monster 6-game JUCO season to Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Set the world on fire with Baker Mayfield. Then set it further on fire with Kyler Murray, then got drafted in the first round. He's like 5'8", like 170 or 180. He's my size. He suffered what we call
the interview room. I'm sorry. He walked into the interview room, and I was like, I could have done this. Like, I could, like,
dude, dynamic. You look at his body, you're like, huh? As far as his foot injury, he suffered what we call Liz Frank, which is a very, very big injury. Liz Frank is essentially the ligament that runs the show in the middle of the foot. So if you don't have this ligament intact, you can't put your foot down and run, period. He required surgery on it. That's why he didn't do any combine stuff. Foot and ankle specialists that deal with these all the time say about 6 months return to play, which should be fine. really not much concern for re-injury, and they are pretty good with getting their explosiveness back pretty quickly. So no concerns, it sounds like.
Very nice. Very nice. Like I said, make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at Dr. Jesse Morse, and also at the Fantasy Doctors. The Fantasy DRS is where you can find them on Twitter as well. Make sure you check out the draft guide. It's at $10 right now. Go ahead and check it out. I believe right now, from what I'm seeing here on Sportscaster, one of my guys has already Run Boys Central, my Central division, my Chicago division, went ahead and already got your guy, Jesse. He already got it, and he's posted to people the link so they can go and get it.
Well,
so
appreciate that.
No worries. I love my team. I love my team here at the network. Other than that, what else do you want to leave for the people before we go ahead and end this stream?
So injuries play a role in every NFL team, every fantasy team, if unless you're super lucky, which we can't predict. Avoid guys who are truly injury prone or have such a bad injury history that it's risky. You could easily make or break your season by knowing who to pick up off the wire before you depend on whether or not a player is going to return on Sunday. There's a pretty good chance, as long as they give us reliable information, that I'll be able to tell you by Tuesday or Wednesday who's going to be available. We will have the Fantasy Doctors podcast, probably, as I said, probably on Thursdays, that will talk about all these injuries. I usually release a big, huge information about who's playing and who's not and what to expect right before a kickoff on Sundays. And then feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or if you're concerned about a guy's injury and is it legit or is it concerning. And then do us a favor and check out our website. Check out our YouTube page. We post a lot of videos. I'm doing Injuries 101, which is a one-on-one injury analysis like this, but for individual injuries when they come up. It's a different YouTube channel, or same YouTube channel, different podcast. And then we're just trying to out here giving people more info because we love the game.
Yeah, it's really valuable, the information that the Fantasy Doctors provide, and I'm highly encouraging and pushing everyone to go check them out. I do not push as heavy as usual. I mean, as I'm doing right now.
We appreciate that support.
Oh, of course. We've been following each other on Twitter for about, actually. So my channel, my pod is about almost a year old. October 10th will be a full year old. And since day one, you've actually been following the Rum Boys, and I appreciate it because it's gone both ways to where we've always been supporting each other, and it's a pleasure to finally have you on the show. Huge fan, like I mentioned. Where else can no worries. Where else can the fans check you out? Do you have any other guest appearances on any other podcast that we should know about?
I was on the Pat Mayo show earlier this week. I do a lot of stuff with Nick BDGE on YouTube. I'll be with him weekly during the season. I was on the Sleeper Wire show the other day. A bunch of shows. If I miss them, I apologize. I try to stay busy. I'll be on a show based in the UK next weekend.
5th Yard Rush.
We're trying to which one?
Is it 5th Yard Rush?
It is. Let me tell you. I have it right here. The name.
I'm all over, so I follow everyone.
Let's see. I was just texting with him. Full 10 yards.
Okay. Yep.
I don't. We haven't set a time, so I think it's gonna be next week. But check out our podcast on probably Tuesday night. I think I'm probably gonna do it on Tuesday night because it's still preseason. and we'll talk about some more injuries and who, we'll take callers. We'll take any questions that people have. We'll try to answer as much as we can.
Dilly, hell yeah. Once again, guys, thank you for tuning in. It's your boy El Capitan, Robbie J. Cheers to me. Cheers to you, Doc. Thank you for coming on the show. All the Rum Boys and Girls, what it do. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday afternoon. We're going to go ahead here and sign out.